Welcome, fellow anime addicts. Thanks for checking out the show. I don't have much to sell you today, no Japanese snack boxes or underwear subscription services. I just want to bring to your attention the AAAPodcast.com website. It's absolutely free, and not only the place to find this show, but our future episodes as well, so you'll know what shows to watch before listening. We also have a ton of past episodes, including a database of our past review scores, as well as links to the YouTube videos that contain them. If you want to get involved, we have a whole mailbag section for you to submit topics, questions, and ideas, as well as links to the absolutely free Discord where we hang out and have a grand old time. And finally, if you're so inclined, where you can support us with our Hobby Addicts, where we talk about all the movies, video games, and non-anime television shows we watch. The after parties, where we hang out, talk about food, and go on weird rants. And finally, the hentai episodes, which contain things that I can't talk about right now. All this and more can be found at the AAAPodcast.com website, so go check it out. Now, time for the show.
何よ、アニメアディクツアノニマスのライブブロードキャストやってるって言ってるでしょ。聞きなさいよね。You are listening to the Anime Addicts Anonymous Podcast. Make your anime addiction worse at AAAPodcast.com. And now, here are your anime addicts.
Hello and welcome to episode 753 of the Anime Addicts Anonymous Podcast, and we are starting on time today because Miss isn't here, baby.
It's 5 minutes late.
It's on time. No one knows. No one's actually live watching on Twitch and or YouTube, whatever their preference is. It's 5. It's 5. Okay, just no one say I'm wrong. Okay, it's fine. Who was that? That was Caroline. Off with her head for. Interrupting this very lame intro that I had planned, but how's it going, Caroline? You're looking very snazzy. I don't know.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. This is actually loungewear.
Loungewear.
One step away from becoming full-on pajamas.
Excellent.
But it's extremely comfortable, and it's Calvin
What's the
Klein.
timeline of lounge to pajama wear?
It's the distinction is actually when you put it on. And when do you take it off? Like, I put this on at the start of the day. I went from pajamas to this. So right now it's loungewear. But if I were to put this on and keep it on into sleepy time, then it becomes pajamas.
So what if I put on loungewear yesterday?
Then it's
wore
pajamas.
it to bed.
Pajamas.
Have not left my house and have kept it on all day.
Pajamas.
Have I transcended?
Once you wear it to sleep, it's pajamas.
Forever.
Yeah, it's pajamas.
I don't know about forever.
How do I get out of
back.
pajamas? It doesn't matter. We'll talk about this in the Hobby Addicts. A bonus segment that you, listener, can pay for by supporting us and giving us money, And can you just give us money, please? Thank you. And we will give you more stuff. Anyway, normally here, we're going to talk about addicts being anime and all that nonsense. But we got some more people to introduce. You heard them. You love them. It's Andrew. How's it going?
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Like how Caroline missed my 15-minute dissertation on the impossible boob shot. And where can you hear that? Nowhere, because that exists in a moment of time. Hi, I'm Andrew.
That sounds like a good reason to join our Discord, where you can not miss such future anime clubs and voice chats and shenanigans that are up to.
Side note, it was that good that I'm still talking about it 3 weeks later. And we'll still be talking about it.
Oh, dear.
This is his defining opus, and unfortunately was lost to the sands of time. And also with us today, are you wearing loungewear? Is it pajamas? Is it streetwear? What is it? It's otaku.
What's up, everybody? I'm actually wearing my very clever Send Nudes shirt. Get it? Noodles.
Oh, it's so cute.
It's a laid-back camp.
It's actually surprisingly wholesome.
Exactly.
Okay.
Once again, Twitch/YouTube
photo
just delivers good content that the audio listeners, of which is the majority of the audience, is missing out on. But that's okay. We love you all the same. We love you also if you check us out on iTunes and go to AAAPodcast.com, scroll down, and you can still submit. There's still time, folks, to vote for the listener choice for the fall 2024 season. And you pick your top 3 shows, and we might review them if enough people agree with you. And that's the power of democracy, folks. So you still have time. Get on over there and do it. We got a lot to talk about today. We have a main topic that Caroline brewed up that will be a bunch of fun, which is deleting moments from the Anime Canon that we're not a big fan of, as well as a review at the very end of the show of Oshi no Ko Season 2. So you might have heard of it. It's kind of a big deal, as the kids say. So any other thing for the good folks participating today before we kick this off?
I was just thinking of this really fun title for this segment. I was thinking it's like something like, what is going on?
I thought we didn't have anything. I was going to do the big news of...
Stop talking.
Wow, I was going to give you a really good title for this segment, but we can just move on.
Okay.
It's fine.
No.
What's your title?
What's the title? They heard the horns.
No, please,
They're in suspense.
Fridgy.
It's just like, I was gonna say, it's like, I didn't like this thing in anime, so I thought I would just delete it from canon, and then you could just, the short version would be deleted, and then there you go.
Oh,
and
erased,
now,
you might say.
Hit the drop.
大ニュースです。It's time for big news of the week.
People love when we blow out their eardrums with that drop, and did it 3 times today, so you're welcome. My big news of the week is that Transformers have been inducted into the Toy Hall of Fame, which is a Hall of Fame that I did not even know existed, to be honest.
Oh, I knew it existed.
Well, that's because you were located in upstate New York, which is where the museum is located.
I'm going to breathe in and out. Do as my therapist said. It's not upstate.
No, it's upper middle New York.
It's
lower
South
middle
Canada.
New York or upper lower New York.
I'm in the Catskills. You guys decide where that is, but it's not upstate.
It's only
I told
funny
you
'cause
upper
Mitch always
lower
calls
New
that.
York. No, it's upper lower New York. It's upper lower New York.
I'm several
right?
hours away from Rochester, where I believe the Hall of Fame
Rochester is pretty much in Canada as well. So
I don't know if I've ever been to Rochester.
It's fine. Well, you can go to the U.S. Hall of Fame for the best toys, and to be inducted here, you need to have icon status, which is to be widely recognized and respected. You need to have longevity, so you can't just be a passing fad. You must induce discovery, foster learning of some kind, and be innovative. And this has been going on since 1998, and there's been 88 toys as of 2024 that have been inducted. This class of 2024 includes Transformers, My Little Pony, and the Phase 10 card game. So pretty good company. Other nerd-related entries I found on this esteemed list was Masters of the Universe, aka He-Man, in the 2022 class, Magic the Gathering from 2019, Dungeons and Dragons from 2016, and Star Wars action figures from 2012. So, yay for Transformers, I guess. Did anyone here have those toys?
As the only one in this panel who was probably alive when they first came out, I had tons of them. And let me tell you, there was no greater rush as a kid than going to your local toy store and running in. And y'all don't understand. It was just aisles and aisles of Transformers. And probably for 3 or 4 Christmases straight, nothing but Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man. That was my thing, man. And then they went and traumatized us with an animated movie in 1986.
No, I like the toys. Now, did you keep them in the transformed robot mode or in the untransformed? Or I guess they started as robots and then transformed into cars. The cars are the skies.
Easier storage was transformed.
Okay.
Robot mode was for playing. Transformed was for storing.
Gotcha.
But
makes sense.
They also were brilliant because they made them in tons of little pieces that a 5, 6, 7-year-old child would instantly lose, and then, well, you had to go buy it again because you needed the blaster and the left hand, and it was brilliant.
They lost them because they ate all of them.
Well, it's a choking risk.
Yeah, I was going to say, they just ate all those pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 80s, they didn't care about choking risks. Our playgrounds were covered with cancerous chemicals. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Gravel
and so were your schools.
It's true. That's very, very true.
Honestly, so my thing with Transformers, so my introduction to Transformers personally goes back to the Beast Wars show and Beasties. And so the Transformers I owned, or at least used to own, if I have them somewhere, I might, come from that show. More specifically. And yeah, also, what took them so long to induct Transformers into this? Like, it meets, like, it's a very innovative toy. Transformable toys was not like a big thing at the time. Like, sorry, wasn't a thing really at the time, not to that level. And nowadays they're even like, well, maybe not nowadays, but they hit a period where they got some pretty crazy transformations going as well. So I'm just surprised it took this long. I mean, 20 years after the G.I. Joe was inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is kind of funny. So yeah, I thought they would have done this earlier, but I mean, at least it finally got in there, which it just feels like it took way longer than it should have.
Yeah, so it's
I
been
think
on
there's
the
so many iconic things on this list. Like, I think sand is on this list.
Yeah.
And sand sounds really funny, but when you realize just how many things you do with sand as a child, like, obviously, and then probably like Connect 4 and like other really popular toys and games, or like the Rubik's Cube that's on there. I also think it's based off of a poll that they take. Like, they have choices each year for inductees, and it's all based on a survey afterwards.
Yeah, only so many toys can make it on. So like Transformers has been in the running. It's been a finalist in like 2009, 2011. Like, it's had shots, but it never cracked. They've never beaten out like Hot Wheels or the Game Boy, stuff like that, or the titular ball, which is also a very funny thing to say. But it just had to wait for its time. And always a bridesmaid, finally a bride. So congrats to Transformers. What else we got?
All right. Next up, we have some news about Attack on Titan. The Wild Fairy Company announced on Tuesday that it will hold an orchestral concert for the Attack on Titan anime's franchise's soundtrack in 2025. The Attack on Titan Beyond the Walls World Tour will go to 23 cities from April to November. And those cities include Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas, Atlanta, Toronto, Boston, New York, Orlando, etc. It will also go to Europe, like Germany and France and the UK, and also Singapore and Australia. Some locations have already started selling tickets. Others will be starting in the next several days or weeks. I will definitely be looking into that for a potential New York City thing, because I believe it's on November 1st, which is a Saturday, which is perfect, and it will be so freaking cool. And you can check out more information on like ticket sales on the website aot.wildfairy, fairy spelled FAERY.com.
I feel like whenever there's this like concert series of anything like Avatar or Attack, you're always the person to bring it up on the big news, and I appreciate it because I don't have to keep my eye out.
One thing, I've only been to the Avatar concert, but I can only imagine just how epic this would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to attend the first ever video games live show, which they held at the Kennedy Center here in DC, and they had the National Symphony Orchestra playing some of the more famous video game themes while on a massive screen playing in the background. And if you've never had a chance to go and see something orchestral while watching something, it is a phenomenal experience.
Hold on, you've only gone to video games live for the first time this year?
No. I went to the first one when they first launched it many
that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Back in like 2002, 3.
They're still running. It was like crazy. No, I went to. I didn't go to the first ones. I went to when they started finally coming to Canada, but like 2008 and whatnot. Yeah, if you can ever, that was a great show. The only reason I stopped going is because it was a lot of the same stuff over. I went like a couple of times. If you've ever been to Distant World, which is the Final Fantasy one, that's another great one to go to as well. Like, these orchestra concerts are a really fun experience. It's like our opera of sorts. It's our symphony of sorts for us nerds and whatnot. And it's
symphony too, like with the level of ability of these orchestras.
and it's definitely worth like a watch. And you'd think you're gonna be bored. Actually, I didn't think that'd be. But I'm technically classically trained, but you technically be bored. But it's actually like a lot of fun. A lot of people get into it. It's like it's like this very polite concert that also people go wild at the same time. It's
and
a great
everybody,
time.
it's like it's also a con at the same time that everybody's dressing up, and then you can get merchandise, I'm sure. And I only gave a short list of the locations that they're going to, so if you want to just see if there is a location near you that I didn't mention, I recommend you go check out the list just in case.
Or just pay that extra money, get our show notes, and the whole list is right here. Oh my goodness, exclusive!
Yeah.
I'm really pushing that. It's fine. It's a good time.
Oh no, the show notes are primo.
This is quality
these days.
content.
Well, I did just copy and paste the information from a free website.
No. On the show notes, we have a list of Caroline's personal opinions on each city. Like, oh, it's in Atlanta, Georgia. Bad. Oh, it's in Minneapolis. Cold.
Okay,
boring,
we're not gonna
lame.
lie here to
get all her hot goss. But
oh yeah. I'll just
not
roast
lie.
each and every city
Exactly.
on this list.
ranking of every country in the world. Go. No. Andrew.
But it's a good
LA,
place.
more like L-lame.
Got him.
Okay, so you had a good.
I was just going to say, I conveniently noticed she just completely didn't even say Washington, D.C. Some hate for my area.
Sorry,
Ignored
I was
its existence
kidding.
completely.
I was going to go through all of them, but I realized that would be extremely boring.
Exactly.
We're talking about real states here, not made up ones. So
It's okay. At least you guys
That
get
was
a
a good one.
concert. My city never gets one. So yeah, dipping a little bit into the political realm here. Ken Akamatsu, famed mangaka, known for such series as Love Hina and Negima, basically ran for office a couple years ago, or started running for office a couple years ago, and now is the Vice Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology for the current administration in Japan. What is abbreviated to MEXT, M-E-X-T? I don't know how you get Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology gets abbreviated to MEXT. I don't know how it is. But essentially, overall, its goal is to improve the development of Japan in relation to the international community. And what's really interesting about this is that Ken Akamatsu in general, he ran under the conservative ticket, and he tends to lean more conservative. And one of the reasons he got into politics, it seems, is because a lot of it almost in a way, from what at least I'm reading from the article and what I gathered, is that he is not a fan of how much Western values may affect how anime is like legislated or in Japan, and so he got into politics to sort of like avoid that, which is kind of interesting to some extent, where he basically went into politics to sort of go to it. But also the other, oh god, what was it? So one of the interesting things about it is that he also started, I think, like an online manga website, where I think a show that we is currently airing this season. My wife is a elementary school student. Is that it? Was also one of the first mangas to be put onto that website as well, along with his. But I think it's just kind of interesting is that he sort of went, hey, I don't like where copyright is going. I don't like this Western influence. Oh yeah, and there we go. The thought I was like, and it's almost kind of partially ironic because you look at Negima. Negima is like heavily influenced. Well, maybe not heavily, but a lot of like Negima is like influenced by Western medieval fantasy being introduced, while also having a lot of like modern and like past Japanese philosophical elements being put into it. So it's kind of interesting to see that instead of being more like, oh, okay, let's see how the West is coming in, and like maybe we shouldn't need to adjust our copyright. Because he also said it might hurt doujins. So like you can see where some of like the whatchamacallit, the want for it to like not affect too many things, because I'm pretty sure like most mangaka, he came up through like the doujin scene as well, and it wouldn't surprise me if you've seen anything of Love Hina.
I mean, that was my first thought. It's he made Love Hina and he's the vice minister of culture. Like that makes sense. Like that's very funny.
Yeah, and so I kind of like almost I stopped. I didn't go very deep down this rabbit hole, but I sort of went to the Wikipedia page for what the Ministry of Education, Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, aka MEXT. It's also known as the Ministry of Letters and Science, but they basically fund a lot of research for a lot of different things, and it's like one of them which was interesting. So like some of the things they funded research for, like children's health in relation to home environment, delta sigma modulations utilizing graphs, gender equality in sciences, neutrino detection, which contributes to the study of supernovas around the world, and other general random research. Like that's just a smattering of what this thing does. It just feels like a catch-all industry, which is kind of really weird. So I'm curious to see how it goes. But I mean, actually, I don't know how this is going to affect anything in the grand scheme of things. But I thought it's interesting to see like a mangaka getting involved into politics, in a way to sort of like, in a way, preserve potentially like the Japanese way, in some regards. But yeah,
Yeah, all
I
throughout
thought that
this
was
entire discussion, I was just focusing on the fact that a department relating to education, culture,
interesting.
sports, science, and technology is freaking huge. I don't know how
Yep,
they get anything done because of how big it is.
yep, and that's why he's a vice minister. So probably it's like a co-lead job or something to that effect. But yeah, no, it just seems like it's a really broad mandate to be like, um, whatever you want to do, we can do it wherever it doesn't fit into the rest of Japanese culture. You know, it's like the equivalent of putting your homeless people and like shoving them off to the side and like hiding them away, like they sort of do in Japan. But yeah, anyway, I thought that was just kind of I was scrolling through the news things. I'm like, wait, the guy who wrote Love Hina and Negima is in politics? Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, happens to the best of us. And finally, Otaku, what do you got?
So I was scrolling and I came across a very interesting bit of news that comes out of the United States, but is related to a pretty popular anime and manga. So in Horry County Schools, which is the school district serving Horry County in South Carolina, they have moved to remove Yusei Matsui's Assassination Classroom manga from its school libraries on Friday. Now, for those that don't know, in the Assassination Classroom manga and its adaptations, a class of middle school students are tasked to assassinate their homeroom teacher, who is an apparent alien with superpowers, before he destroys Earth at the end of the school year. Jennifer Hannikin is the mother who issued the complaint and described the manga's content, saying that the manga has numerous pages depicting handguns, rifles, knives, and potions. 'Cause God forbid there's potions.
The potions!
And that the story talks about gasp killing in the pages. She added that there's girls in lingerie hopping on top of men in the book. And she also noted that the manga's characters discuss ways on how to kill their alien teacher in the story, which is the entire point. Just for reference, the manga is rated for ages 13 and up. So for me, this just gives me a whole, if there is something popular that teens or kids like, there is always going to be some parent who has an issue with it. It started back in the 80s with Dungeons and Dragons. It was just fun paper stuff, and people are like, it's satanic, it's indoctrinating our children, they're terrible. Then they moved on to video games in the 90s. There's always something that somebody's mad about, and it just continues this trend of book banning that I am not down for as an avid reader. And I'm curious, what do you guys think about more book banning?
Well, book banning is just dumb in general, unless it's like, actually terrible contented books, which a lot of the times it's not. It's like they tried to, as much as I don't care for Harry Potter books anymore, they tried to ban those, and those were basically harmless.
Same thing as Dungeons and Dragons. They were calling that satanic and, influencing children poorly.
I think the real reason this happened, is because the kids found out that the abbreviation for an assassination classroom was ass class. And
that
the
abbreviation.
mother is like, "What do you mean? What is ass class? What are you talking about, ass class? Why are you guys seeing ass class?" I know I've said it like a million times. And they found out about this book, which is genuinely harmless, right? And they just wanted it gone. But also, when it comes to book banning, a lot of the times, it's not about the book itself. It's about what the book might represent. And it's a form of control over knowledge, which keeps people from experiencing the world and developing free thought. And so that's why I don't care for it very much, right? And a lot of books that you see that get banned tend to be like banned for the dumbest of reasons, because it mentioned that lesbians exist or gay people exist or people of color exist. Like it's wild. So yeah, this is really stupid, and I hope they like learn from it.
So
Like,
delving
I
deeper
can-
into it, I was just going to say the appeal process to reinstitute a book is 5 years. So now this book is off the shelves for 5 years. Sorry, Caroline, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. Like I can definitely see both sides of the conversation here. For one thing, it is a school library. It's not, school libraries don't have everything anyway. So if that means like Assassination Classroom is not on their shelves, they would probably substitute it with a different manga that does not include, guns in schools and all that stuff, which again, like, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're worried about students bringing weapons to school, Assassination Classroom is not going to be the inciting and only thing to make that happen. There are more problems involved than just Assassination Classroom, if that is the worry here. But again, does have some sexual content in it that you might not want to have in a school just from a PR perspective, because I do work in a school district. So I can kind of see both sides. I would not be wasting my time on focusing on this one thing, though. And if out of all the things to worry about in life, this wouldn't be the one thing. But I can kind of understand the reasoning.
Oh, I'm definitely going back to like, because if you actually read it or watch the anime, it's about how proper education improves people's situations, and people don't like that for some reason. I'm being the most charitable here. If it really is about the handguns, rifles, and knives, I think that is a much bigger issue that needs to be discussed anyway. But Assassination Classroom is not gonna incite kids to come and kill their teachers in schools. Like, if anything, it tells them that they should respect their teachers more.
And I know that a challenge of educators today is literacy. My thought process is, even if it is just a few words, better to get the kids interested in something and they are reading versus not reading at all. Because I know that at least when I went through public schools, half the books that were on my required reading are banned in so many places now. And it's wild to me. It is wild to me. I just don't get it. Once you start talking about banning stuff for content, I think you really have to draw a fine line as to what is inappropriate or excessive and what isn't. But, that's just me. I'm old and cranky.
And on a side note, I was totally going to pick this article until I noticed that you had picked it as well, because I thought it was an interesting subject to talk about as well. So
I think I heard something about this in the past, though, like not recently.
This is not the
I'm not sure
first
if there's something
time
else.
that
Yeah.
Assassination Classroom has been banned, and it won't be the last. And I get it, as Caroline said, it does have to deal with violent natures in a setting that people might not want their kids reading it. I get it, but also it's marked appropriately. Hopefully, people are monitoring their kids and being mindful of what's being out there, and I get it. So I think we can move on.
I'll tell you. 1 second.
Go ahead.
I think just a fun little anecdote here. This shows a little bit of the prudishness that sometimes exists in schools. In my public library where I lived, right? I don't think they realized it because of how anime and manga used to be viewed back then. In the children's section, the manga Sorcerer Hunters was there. When I was 12, I read Sorcerer Hunter. and that is not for children. I don't even think in Japan it's for children. Like, it is, like, there were titties in this book. And so I'm like, people need to, like, take it a little easier and stop this, like, fear thing. But let's go to our topic, right? That's what we want to do
Yes.
next.
So a topic that I thought about while looking through TikTok and saw somebody else doing something very similar. I forget who it was. But it's a discussion about deleting from the anime canon. Like, there are so many anime out there that I love. But there are one or two plot points that prevent me from giving it a 10 out of 10, or even close to a 10 out of 10. And just things that could be taken out and nothing would be affected, really.
So this is
and you just wonder, why was this put in here in the first place? It's that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
we're
so
just
this
talking
is-
about things we just swipe away.
Sorry. So this isn't like a nitpick of like, oh, I don't like the show and I don't like this and this and this. This is like shows that we enjoy, that we're big fans of, but have like one or two pitfalls or hurdles that it just doesn't clear. And we're just like, oh, if that was just not in the show.
Yeah.
I failed the assignment.
that's
That
so
is definitely
easily
not my
changed.
pick.
So
Oh, I failed that assignment. I did not.
I
do
gave
not
the
love this show.
clarification today.
After I already planned to talk about this thing since yesterday.
well, if you can still talk about it if you want, but I think Caroline should
talking
lead
about it.
off with an example of one that really was like, this
Okay.
is emblematic
Yeah.
of what we're here to do.
This is the number one thing I thought about this entire time, and everything else came later. And it's about Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju. It's not a secret that that is one of our favorite shows on this podcast, because both me and Mason, I think Mitsugi too, we all love this show. We talk about it way too much. But there is something in this show that I despise. And I gasped when I saw this. And I'm not saying that this is the only thing keeping this show from a 10 out of 10. I think I gave the show a 9 out of 10 overall. That's probably not like the solitary reason, but it is something that I wonder, why was this included? And I don't want to be too detailed in what this thing is, because I don't want to. It is a spoiler. It comes in like in the last episode. They did this to me in the last episode of the series. But generally speaking, Konatsu, the girl in the show in the second season, she has a child. That's not too much of a spoiler. But the problem comes in when they imply who the father of this child is. And it's not like 100% certain, but the mere implication of who it could possibly be, and they doubled down on this implication, it's freaking gross. And I don't care who the father of this child is. I could not know who this father of the child is, and I would not care by the end of the series. But their inclusion of it, really, that's what I was thinking about when I ended this show. Not the 100 amazing things about the show. And I'll just leave it at that.
I don't disagree with you, but I don't think it was such a pitfall from me. And like, to me, there are plenty of moments from shows that I don't like, whether it's from like a death or a torment or bad things suffered by good characters, from like Berserk, Heavenly Delusion, Fullmetal Alchemist. Like, those are important moments that I wouldn't touch. This one, I think, just stings a little bit more because it's at the very end, and like there's no recovery from it. Like, you don't see how the show like tries to justify it or anything. It just is like, and this and bye, and you're like, okay. So
But it kills me because they didn't try to. They didn't try to do anything with that. There was no reason for that being there. But they just like, if I were to give a food analogy, which you so love to do, it is like giving me a supreme sundae with high quality ice cream, whipped cream,
oh, now you're
cherry
talking.
sprinkles. It looks delicious. and then you drizzle on some expired, disgusting topping, like chocolate syrup if it tasted like shit. Like, you can get around that. You can still have a really enjoyable sundae. But you put it on at the end, and you didn't have to put it on at the end. You could have just left it out, but you put it on anyway.
See, this is more like putting a rotten cherry on top.
Yeah, you know
like,
what? That's
it's
more like it.
easy enough for me to remove it, though. Like, I can kind of forget about that.
Yeah, you're far better at the food analogy. That was correct.
I just choose to ignore that. No, that's good. Otaku, do you have? We can just go around the table on this and just keep on playing ping pong.
So for me, the first thing that came to my mind, and I want to give you guys context. So I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion as it was released in the United States. So we're talking one VHS tape at a time, and there were significant gaps of time before the next one would be released. So you're looking at like 2 or 3 episodes per VHS tape, and you're going on this journey. And this is when anime is still really starting to break into the United States as an entertainment medium. And it was like nothing we had ever seen before. Yeah, we had Robotech with mechs, but Evangelion was like nothing we had ever seen. So me and my friends, we couldn't wait for the next volume to come out. And we went on this journey with this franchise and watched and watched. And the end was all of our first experience with a what the fuck was that moment. Like, are you kidding me? This is how you end the show. And I'm not going to spoil it for anybody if anybody is interested in trying, but it's basically...
how to spoil it. It's kind of hard to talk about.
I mean, if you don't know about it by this point, congratulations. You avoided many spoilers.
To me, the end of the show was like the writers had a plan. They were going through it. The angels and everything were building up. And then they all said, okay, let's drop acid, snort coke, smoke meth, and write an ending. And that's what vomited onto the screen.
I know. It's so good, right? I love the ending so much.
And you know what's the craziest part? It is actually the most coherent of the endings. That is it's actually the most coherent and actually the most logical of all the endings we get for Evangelion is those last 2 episodes of that show, which is wild to me how crazy it is. And that's the funny part.
But you think how many times they've tried to redo it? Like, if I remember correctly, the actual author had to apologize for the ending when it initially aired, because even the Japanese public was like, bro, what the fuck? What is this? And it just, that entire journey, I love that franchise up to the last 2 episodes. I almost wipe it from my mind like Promised Neverland Season 2. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist. I don't acknowledge it. I refuse to acknowledge it.
It's a shame.
It's
a shame. I absolutely adore the ending. I am a huge fan of it. I love how they just... I understand if you were watching it so segmented and so, like, not just being able to binge it. If you had to be like, okay, I waited months for the next 3 episodes and, like, this is what I get. Did I put in the wrong disc? Like, did I get a bad copy? Like, I could get that frustration the same way that people who, like, despise the Endless 8, who had to watch it week to week and waited 6 days for just it to dupe them again. Like, I understand that. But as someone who is mentally superior than all of mankind, I thought it was so good. I loved it.
No, honestly,
I'm on Otaku Cop's side. I just don't get it. And I'm probably just not smart enough to get it.
Well,
That's
and
fair.
we were like 18 and 19-year-olds watching this, and we're not smart enough for any deep diving, nuanced conversation that goes further into, extra meaning. We were just like,
the cool robots, where'd they go?
Yeah. In general, I hate surrealism. I'm like, just let me enjoy my shit. Don't make it weird.
Oh, and you know what's interesting about Evangelion I honestly think the show is overrated in a lot of different ways. I understand what it did for anime and whatnot. I think it's overrated. Until I saw the other endings to that show, I was just like, what the hell happened here? He literally ran out of budget. There's no way he planned for this. And then over the years, and I watched this when I was like in my mid-20s. I didn't watch it when I was 16 like some of my friends or whatnot who like it became this transformative like emo experience for them. I watched it later in life, quote unquote. And what's interesting is that you realize that Hideaki Anno is actually just a giant troll who got pigeonholed into this being his like seminal work of fiction, that he never really wanted it to be his seminal work of fiction, that it makes him so much money that he can do whatever he wants. And so every time he may have apologized, but I don't think he never meant that apology. He just did it because he had to, and it's the Japanese thing to do, quote unquote. And every piece of media he has put out since then has basically been him trolling Evangelion fans for saying, you guys are overthinking this. This is just a show I made, right? Like, that's how you get in the third movie that scene with the piano, the infamous scene with the piano, which I think is a seminal moment in anime movie history, personally. Anyway, that's just my opinion, though. But I agree. Yeah. I wish they made those episodes look better. I don't, also, if you delete them, Ava is a mess, and that's just exactly how it should be, in my opinion, also.
Animator84 in the Twitch chat is saying, not in love with Evangelion, but my mind immediately went to scene, or I can't even read, but my mind went straight to 2 scenes from End of Evangelion. And I know exactly which ones you're talking about, and I get it. There's a scene where Shinji just gets a little too passionate and lets a little of himself out, and yeah, that's pretty yikes. But overall, good pick, Otaku. Even if I don't agree, I definitely see where you're coming from. So, good call. The first one I want to talk about is Code Geass, which is a very silly show in a lot of ways, but it's very fun, and it takes itself a little too seriously, but it's just a good time. It's good 90s nostalgia all the way through. Great soundtrack, great opening. But there's a moment where our boy, Lelouch, he's doing his thing, and he has a certain power where he can kind of mind control folks. And things are going well. He's kind of got things under wraps. Things are going in the right direction. And he says a joke. He says a goof, and things get away from him to a degree that is so ridiculous that it sets off a whole massacre. And
oh my god,
that
sounds awesome.
Like, they're like, okay, things are going well. We need something to make the plot not go well. How are we going to do that? And the writers didn't have a great way of doing it besides having this really awkward gag to make this happen, and it just was so poorly done that it's like laughable, that you're like, this is really how they got here, from things going well to things going bad. And it's such a cartoonish way of making that shift that it's kind of a cluster. So besides that, real fun show, very silly.
Disagree,
but it's so goofy. It's so emblematic of the style and times. It was very fitting with the show, but I don't like it.
This sounds like something that would be very successful, like this like a careless joke turning into eventually a massacre. I think that would do really well in the Eminence and Shadow type show.
Absolutely.
From what I know of Code Geass, though, it doesn't sound like it's
no, it actually does
a tonal
fit.
thing.
It's very serious.
It's actually, I disagree with you, Mason, on this one. I think it's actually I don't know if you can delete it and get the same effect out of the rest of the show. I think the whole point of that scene,
it
seems silly at the time. It does, but it actually makes a lot of sense, right? It shows a lack of control of his powers. The fact that an innocent thing could turn into such a huge mess, and how he quote unquote recovers from it and utilizes it to his advantage almost immediately. But also you have to take into context that this is probably, even though royal families are weird, this is actually probably his first actual like crush and love right? Like he actually loved this person, not as much as he loves his sister. That's a whole other side story. But like,
Ooh.
but like this is like someone he actually really liked out of everybody in the royal family. Like she was problematic because she was such a good person, and he even though and they were having such a sweet moment, and the gut punch of when he says it like, oh yeah, I could just say kill all the Japanese people and you would have to do it, and then her eyes go blank because she's accepting the order. Like it is, I think, not masterful, but I think it's just sort of like such a sad moment that I don't think it actually comes off as silly in a lot of ways. I think it's just sometimes how jokes can sometimes go too far, and I think it's emblematic of that. Now the problem is, back in the day, and as someone who was watching this as it aired, you had to wait a couple of months to get those last 2 episodes because they had pacing budget issues or like animation issues, and so the last 2 episodes had to be made later on as an OVA. You know when Japan does that sometimes. So yeah, but you know what? I'm not here to disagree with everyone's picks. You delete it from anime, it changes the whole show.
Exactly. I get that it had to happen. I just wish it was performed a little bit more believably. So,
fair.
But
enough.
what is your claim of things
slavery?
that you wish? Fair enough. What's next?
Will won't argue against slavery.
Slavery. I win the argument. Period. Stop. Full stop. No. So essentially, Rising of a Shield Hero, I think, has a few problematic elements. And you know what? When you said it's about shows we love, I don't love this show. I think there's a lot of good things in this show. I think the world building is really interesting and how it uses mechanics, the game mechanics in the system to explore the world. I think the soundtrack is pretty solid. The animation is pretty good at a lot of points in it. I'm talking specifically about the first season. I don't know about later seasons, really. It kind of like, I think I watched part of season 2. But this is like sort of like a major and minor part of the show all at the same time, and it's the aspect of slavery. And one of the reasons why I think you can excise it, and I think it makes it a that much better show, is that slavery in the show is treated as a game mechanic as well. And but also the characters acknowledge that it's a bad thing, but they also don't care about it. The main character has trust issues, so the only people that he feels safe with are people he has full control over, which I think is problematic in its own right as well, right? And so the issue I have with it, and I'm not going to say all of the slavery and shield because I really do believe it, but I think I can pinpoint it to the moment when, and semi-spoilers, when his first slave, Raftalia, where there's a whole other host of problematic issues with how the leveling works in this world, gets released as a ploy by the nobles to make the shield hero look bad, right? And she doesn't want it because it's poor writing, in my opinion. And so essentially it gets to the point where at the end of it, she's now free. She still wants to be with the shield hero. And she chooses at the end to be like, you know what? I know you'll never trust me unless I do this. So I want to be your slave again. And and that just feels like it doesn't really, it only serves to service the main character, and it doesn't do it in any interesting way. And if anything, it doesn't show any growth in any of the characters. So I don't even think it narratively works as a story element for either of those characters. He hasn't like opened himself up more, and even though you find out that he at any way, point or shape or form, and she basically has to subserviate herself, because even though she's like a very capable fighter and she really loves this person, at least, and she wants to be with them, she has to like shackle herself to be with this person, basically to be with her father / wannabe lover.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of problematic things in Shield Hero. But yeah, I can definitely agree on a lot of those aspects. I think there could have been a way to keep, as bad as it sounds, to keep portions of this whole slavery thing in play and still let it come out somewhat decently. Like, the shield hero at the beginning he's like kind of like a more gray character through reasons of the beginning. So I think starting out with a slave on his side is problematic for sure, but it would have been interesting if by that point that you were talking about, he had decided, like, wait a minute, I can trust this person and I'm going to grow from this. We're all gonna grow from this. Let her be free. He can trust her. They can move on equal terms. But the fact that they turned it back around, they rewound everything, all that potential development, and let them remain stagnant and problematic, that is an issue.
Well, they decided to try to equalize it by making a season 2 of it, which was so dog shit that everyone forgot about how bad the slavery was. So, really, it was just a comedy of errors of adaptation stuff. But I definitely agree with where Caroline and Andrew are coming from. No complaints here.
Yeah, I'm not gonna
Not brave
argue
enough to
against
take
that
the
either.
pro-slavery double down on it.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's gonna say
No,
but it's
I
okay if
agree.
there was no slavery in this anime. I would have been totally
Yeah,
okay with it.
and I'm, you know what, like you said, I think it's not that I have a problem with all the slavery. I mean, I kind of do, but like it's that one moment where, oh, so this actually has nothing to do with that. You have nothing to say about the slavery in this world, even though we all know it's bad. Everybody in the world knows it's bad. You just are using it for whatever potential fantasies.
You
But
can
yeah,
have
anyway.
problematic elements in your shows, in your anime,
Yeah.
but you need to do something with them besides
Yeah.
use them lazily and or double down on things that I think most people would be not so good about. But Caroline, what do you got next?
Yeah.
Speaking of why, we have Fruits Basket. Fruits Basket is such a wholesome show about love and overcoming trauma and becoming a family. Why are there so many instances of grooming in this show? And they're framed very romantically. It doesn't happen just once. It happens twice and possibly 3 times. I can't really remember because I blocked it out of my memory.
There's so many that you just lose count.
There's so many. And they are used as foils. Like it honestly baffles me that it happens not just once but several times in this story written by a woman. And it really keeps me from loving Fruits Basket. If I really love a show, I'm going to watch all of it. I won't let myself watch the sequel film that it acts as a prequel because I know the focus is going to be on a grooming relationship that is treated romantically and we're supposed to like it. So I'm not even going to let myself get into that.
I mean, you mentioned grooming arcs in stories written by ladies. I mean, we could easily have Bunny drop on this list. We could easily have, oh my goodness, the sequel of Inuyasha, where we find out like Shishomaru was it's not the first, it's not going to be the last, but we can still find it distasteful every time it pops up. And all pretty solid stories that just they didn't need this. You can have bad characters in other ways, and I get it.
What's wrong with like a 2-year age difference? Like, why do you have to make it more like 10 years and also add in the fact that this is a teacher and student? Yeah, that's really fun.
This is just
isn't
an
it,
us
guys?
problem.
It really
I think this is
gets
just
you
an us problem.
ready for romance.
Bang.
I have one,
And it kills me because the rest of the show is great. It's so sweet, and people love this show. So why are we so easily distracted from these really problematic things that for some reason are in it?
because love is weird.
Love
And
is
love
very
works
weird.
and works in mysterious
Love
ways.
is love, except in this case. Love is not meant to be like this.
So yeah, no, I've never seen Fruits Basket, unfortunately, so I have not much to bring in on this particular topic. But no, I mean grooming arcs. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them in anime, and a lot of them can be excised. Would be ideal. So yeah.
So, as somebody who watched the original and the remake, I think what it boils down to is even though it is a part of the story, Fruits Basket largely, I think you touched on it. The big themes are family, overcoming trauma, and progressing. And those messages are so strong in that show that those relationships kind of fall to the wayside. You're not really focused on that. It might touch a nerve, but the other parts of it, like her being taken into that house, her helping them break the curse, things of that nature, kind of trump that other stuff for people. And you just don't even think about like, oh yeah, there is that problematic relationship, because the other parts of it just evoke so much emotion in people, and so many people relate to some of the trauma that's there, that they just kind of like, yeah, it's problematic, but this part was so good.
Yeah.
But I totally could see where you're coming from.
Well, we did run a little long with the big news of the week. So I say let's get one more from Otaku and another one from Caroline, because I know she's got a lot of good ideas on this list.
So many.
So
Oh wow! Just skip. I have a quick one I want to put in here.
Okay.
It's like literally, it's a line. It's literally a line. I think that you should delete Gate of Bootylon from Keijo and replace it with Unlimited Buttworks, which is what it should have always been called. And that is my deletion from Anime Canon.
Yeah, no arguments there. Okay, Otaku, what do you got next?
So, unlike you, Mason, I am going to touch sacred ground here. I am, by trade, I'm a public servant. I respond to crisis. I try to save people. It's what I do every day. So, if I have an opportunity to save a cute dog and a little girl, I'm going to do it. So, memes be damned, haters be damned. Nina Tucker and Alexander live. There's no reason. Full Metal Alchemist's quality and everything does not change if they live. If that whole little side story doesn't take place, it doesn't change anything that happens down the line.
It
that
lets
little
you
girl and that
know
dog
as
can
the
live.
viewer that shit can go down. And
the
that
entire show up to that point is that. Like, there's so much shit that goes down.
I mean, especially, okay, maybe more so in the original. But in Brotherhood, it's so much earlier in Brotherhood, and it's kind of more fun shenanigans, magic with my brother. So I guess it depends on what series you're talking about. I definitely think it's needed in Brotherhood. I could argue it being not there in the regular one.
I think it's such a...
It's so funny, too.
Smack in the face. It's fun. It's a good smack in the face. Like, I know that it starts off with a smack in the face, but this is an even bigger smack. That alchemy can be used for such evil by evil people. And what Alan and Edward were doing at the beginning, that wasn't meant for evil purposes. Like, this is something, there was a chance that they took for love. This, on the other hand, was evil for the sake of progress, which brings us into the whole story with Scar and King as well. So I feel like it's a very complimentary but very upsetting story that serves a purpose.
Kind of gives me Bondru Made in Abyss vibes of like mad scientists messing with the innocents, and you feel bad for it, but
no, I'm with Otaku on this one. Save the kid, save the dog. Fuck
Thank
it.
you.
You know what? I still think you can teach people. Look, as he's not trying to take away my Hugh scene in like episode 25 of the original show, which hits so hard and basically almost makes me cry like a little baby. This one, I'm like, oh no, I like those two. I'm not crying though. I didn't get that emotionally invested in those two. Let me get this, and the memes are great. You know what? Keep delete it from anime, but keep delete it from anime, but keep the memes.
No, that's
keep
you can't
the memes.
You can't have your ice cream
Delete
and eat
it
too.
Yes, I can, Mason.
At
Yes,
least the
I
fusion
can.
meme. You got to keep the Dragon Ball fusion
See,
meme.
that's what I'm
between
talking
the two of
about.
them.
You can't.
Okay, last thing.
Last one, Caroline.
Yes,
lay it on us.
Okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because here's something really, really, really quick that I'm just gonna use as a preface. Demon Slayer, Uzui, why are you acting like an absolute creep, kidnapping young girls and spanking their ass for no reason?
There's a whole bucket of shows
no other...
that we could put in here with like My Hero Academia. I know. Just really problematic fan service that just is unnecessary.
It's not even fan service. It's like, that's not who you are. So why did you do that once and never make that part of your personality? So that aside, Your Lie in April. I really liked Your Lie in April, but something felt a little weird about it. And then after I finished it and I saw some reviews of it, I realized what it was. So our main character, slight spoiler, is a literal abuse victim. And yet, the tone of the show includes comedy. Slapstick comedy. Violent slapstick comedy towards the expense of the main character who is a literal abuse victim. So it kind of feels weird. So I can't love Your Lie in April as much as I should due to that.
I honestly have not seen the show in so long that I can't remember it.
It's like
but
his
I
best
believe
friend is like being like, "Oh, you dummy," and like punches him in the face, kind of thing.
I believe it. I believe it. I must have blocked it out of my memory because it was so unneeded. I will vouch for it in my ignorance, though, and trust everything that Caroline says.
Thank you. Anybody else has a comment on that?
No,
I've never
it's
seen
been years since I watched it too, but I do remember it being very strongly entrenched with the abuse notes. So you're probably on the mark with this one.
Thanks. Okay, and I have a couple other things too, but that's just for the people who get the show notes.
Oh my goodness, the show notes are big clutch. They're coming up spades. So if you want all our juicy stuff about Gurren Lagann and Erased and all the other stuff, go check that out. But with that, we got to get to our news break. But first, what do we got for the good folks, Otaku?
So our in-show weekly trivia question for this week. In Oshi no Ko, what is the name of the manga that the stage play is based on?
Good luck. We'll see you guys in a bit. This is Mason, and this is your news break for episode 753. For those of you who are fans of the 2020 light novel series, Backstabbed in a Backwater Dungeon, you'll be pleased to know that it will be getting an anime adaptation in 2025. The synopsis reads, "My trusted companions tried to kill me, but thanks to the gift of an unlimited gacha, I got level 9999 friends, and am out for revenge on my former party members." Wait a second, that's not the synopsis, that's actually the rest of the title, as the actual synopsis is about a character named Light who is turned on by his former comrades after he's kicked out of the tribe. And, as the title suggests, when trapped in the darkest part of the abyss and on the run, he uses his unlimited gacha mechanic, his sole magical skill, and for once it actually produces amazing results, turning him into an overpowered fighter. Using these newfound powers, he becomes a juggernaut in the backwater dungeon, and as you might expect, uses it to get revenge on the party members who once abandoned him. So yeah, sounds like a pretty fun light novel revenge story, so stay tuned for that. Next, if you listened to our Anime Shark Tank episode and felt a little bummed out that Mitsugi complained that none of you guys watch old anime, and you want to try but you don't know where to start, here's a great option. Crunchyroll announced that it will be streaming Ashi no Jo, also known as Tomorrow's Joe, in English, Spanish, and Portuguese in the Americas. The first season, which consists of about 79 episodes, actually exactly, I just checked, is streaming right now, with the second season, at 47 episodes, launching on December 3rd. If you didn't know, it tells the story of Joe Yabuki, who starts off in the slums of Tokyo and rises under the tutelage of a former boxer to be a boxer. This is a highly acclaimed classic anime from the 1970s and influenced a ton of shonen shows including Hajime no Ippo, and has references in all sorts of shows from The 100 Girlfriends Who Really Love You, to Bakuman, to Bocchi the Rock, to Gintama, to Food Wars, to pretty much everywhere across anime, so get in on this classic today. And in the final piece of news, a little bit of something from Delicious in Dungeon. You can now purchase replica cookware of Senshi's two-handed pot and frying pan. And even better, if you are located in Japan, you can do it through their Furusato Noze program, also known as a hometown tax donation program. This tax program is actually pretty neat. It began in 2008, and it's essentially a way for folks in urban locations to kind of donate some of their taxes to more of the sparsely populated rural areas of Japan. Through the program, you kind of donate money, and it's taken out of your taxes and applied towards their benefits. And in cases like this, it comes with a gift from the prefecture you are donating to. Now, of course, you can buy these items outright. Both are available through the Mura no Kajiya website, with the two-handed pot retailing at 4,700 yen, and the frying pan for about 4,400 yen, which is about $30 each. Well, that will do it for the news break of episode 753, and we'll see you back in the show.
So, you're at the gym, feeling great, and looking great too, I might add. That is until your favorite podcast ends. Now, without your headphones, you're suddenly lost in the wilds of Meatland. Don't get lost in the wilds of Meatland. Get the AAA Podcast extra content. We'll help you gain some fun times with our hobby addicts, after parties, and hentai episodes. Nothing gets your blood pumping quite like hentai, and nothing helps the podcast quite like your support. So head over to AAAPodcast.com/join or Patreon to support the show. Again, that's AAAPodcast.com/join or Patreon. Bro, sounds like you need a spot from the AAA podcast.
Welcome back to the show. When we left you, we had a weekly trivia question. In Oshi no Ko, what is the name of the manga that the stage play is based on? And the answer is Tokyo Blade.
Tokyo Blade.
It's just one of those words that you just want to say with the Japanese accent.
Yeah.
But I'm too cowardly to do so. But what I'm not too cowardly to do is read the mailbag. Actually, I'm not going to read it because I'm going to make Frigimon do it. But I'm not too cowardly.
I was going to say, are you stealing my thing?
To dance. So,
it's time for an almighty anime mailbag. Anime.
Mailbag.
Didn't say I was going to dance well.
No one asked for anything more or less. So, today's mailbag comes from Muffins. Hey, what's up, AAA? I hope your guys are doing well. Ever since the Anime Court episode, there's been one thing that I've been thinking about. Mason is always saying that people should have low ratings for some shows on their list. But if a person doesn't like a show, why would they bother to continue watching it? it makes more sense to have the bad ratings on drop shows. Like, I mean, nobody's forcing nobody to watch a bad show, usually. So, like, ideally, a person should have ratings above a 6 mostly on their scene list, which is what my list is like. But sad, you didn't go through it. Just some thoughts. Thanks, and hope you have a good day.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. Though I think the more shows you watch, the more you realize, the more you use your full suite of things. The less you're getting fed the best anime that is out there, and be like, oh, this is pretty good. Oh, I don't need to watch it. You drop it. But I feel like when you're in the game a long time, I mean, obviously, when we review a show, if I don't like it, I don't have a choice. I still have to watch it. But when you're watching like seasonal stuff, or you're watching with friends or stuff, you're more prone to being exposed to shows that you just really don't love. And honestly, I feel like watching some pretty cruddy shows, like the 3s and the 2s out of 10, are kind of important to learn how much a show doesn't work, as understanding what you like about anime is watching the shows that are 10 out of 10s or 9 out of 10s. Like, you don't know the full breadth. I'm saying this is a young man's game, to be like, oh, everything I finish is a 6 or above. And there's value in that, and I'm glad you value your time to not push through and watch these super cruddy shows. But sometimes they're going to sneak up on you, and you're going to find yourself watching an absolutely garbage show for reasons that you can't quite explain. And I hope when you come to that, my friend Muffin, you'll give it a low score for me. But it doesn't make sense. You're right. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I will only stick with a bad show and rate it for 1 or 2 reasons. One of them is, of course, for the podcast, which, of course, we have to watch shows we sometimes don't like and rate it anyway. The other is for Anime Club. So even if a show is really bad, I want to stick through it just for discussion purposes. And maybe it's not even just for an Anime Club, as Mason said. Maybe you just have a friend group that's watching the show and you want to be able to discuss it. And I think that if the average, I was reading something else. Like, even if a show is really bad, I want to stick with it. And I don't want to rate shows I haven't completed, because I would want a totally accurate view on something when I rate it. That otherwise it doesn't seem quite fair, even if I'm pretty sure this show that I would rate as a 3 out of 10 is probably a 3 out of 10.
Yeah, so how do I put this? I think a lot of shows kind of just fall into the middle range of averaging to middling to whatnot. And I think you, in general, as a normal person, not a podcast host or book club or anime club or anything kind of that enjoyer of anime, you're gonna basically be using a sliding scale for how you rate things, right? Like, essentially, your 6s are your lower ratings, or your 5s are your low ratings, and your 10s are your high ratings, right? Or your 1s and your whatever it is. And that just comes from the fact that you're unlikely to finish something, especially when it comes to like an anime TV series, right? You're asking for 3 to 6 hours of your life to watch something. You're not going to watch all of it. And a lot of people don't rate things they don't watch. I personally ascribe to the school of informed hate. So I usually will like to watch a really bad thing so I can hate on people who really like a bad thing. More often than not, I have been known to do that in the past, and I'm willing to do that in the past. It's why I watched a show called Dureiku back in the day, which is one of, if not my lowest ratings, of a 2 on my anime list, to tell people why that show was terrible. And in case anyone tried to say it was good in any way, shape, or form. And I informed hate is an old thing from the Gundam podcast I used to listen to back in the day, and I ascribe to that school. So in general, I think a lot of people outside of the normal like pod reviewer situation, your scale in general is going to be something like 6 to 5 to 10 is what your sliding scale is. And that just means, really, on average, you're watching shows that are just middling to good. And you're only watching a bad thing because either it's so bad it's good and people have told you that, or it's so bad and you have a completionist streak. that you have to watch something. But outside of like review circles, you're rarely going to find people who do that. And so, yeah, I think it's actually, so like, I didn't say it on the episode itself, but when it's like, you're using the full range, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But I'm like, I don't think it's like a thing that is, it's not the norm to use your full range, right? When it comes to judging media, because in general, you're not going to finish media. You're not going to finish media unless you have to, essentially.
Yeah. Good discussion points. What do you think, Otaku?
I was just going to say, I fall along in the same vein. Like, I rarely would rate something that I don't complete. And the only time that I would rate something low is for hate watching or just out of curiosity's sake. Like, this is so bad. I'm genuinely curious where this is going to go because and there aren't many examples in my viewing history that would fall under that, but there was a show a couple years ago called Happy Sugar Life. That was awful, but I watched it to completion because the first episode was so out of pocket that I was like, let's just see where this goes. So you're going to get those shows that grab your attention because they're so bad. And you either want to hate watch it or you're just like, I got to see where this train wreck stops. So,
Same thing with Happy Sugar Life. Like, everything points to this show being terrible, and yet I was intrigued.
It's one of those, like, it's not even so bad it's good. It's like, so, like, wow, I didn't actually think you would do that I don't even know how to feel.
It's a dumpster fire that is
opening
giving
is
you
great.
just enough heat that you're like, I'll huddle around this for warmth.
Yeah, let me
And
watch
yet-
this utter insanity occur.
If you were to actually score it on merit, you're like, what the fuck did I just watch? But it definitely kept my attention just because it was so out of pocket.
And listen, it's not like I'm saying, oh, you need to have as many 2s as you have 5s as you have 10s. Like, I'm looking for that bell curve. And I want to see, you learn a lot about someone by what they're willing to stick through and why they are. And it's a sign of, like Otaku, discovering, just going out into the abyss of anime and just picking something and going with it. And that yields great things sometimes. And
reviews
your
are
life at others.
Curves are going to be asymptotic. I think that's the mathematical term in general when it
Use
comes to
math
people
around
reviews.
me.
Well, I just did.
What's wrong with you?
I just did. 2 + 2 = 4, unless.
Unless, no, 1 + 1 = 2. And we've got season 2 of Oshi no Ko as our review. And I will let the good Caroline take it from here.
Okay, I've recovered. Yeah, we're reviewing the second season of
Mathematical
Oshi no
damage.
Ko. Yeah, that's basically me. Yeah, so this was from the summer 2024 season. The first season came out in spring 2023, and I passed it. You can watch it on High Dive if you're somewhat interested. Overall, I'm going to assume people are familiar with the first season synopsis, but just briefly, somehow I'm going to make this brief. It is about two people died, were reincarnated as their favorite idol's twin son and daughter. A little weird, but whatever. Idol, she gets axed off in the first episode. Now these two very traumatized and awkward, weird people are trying to solve the murder while also going through the entertainment industry of Japan. But specifically, the second season follows Aqua, the son of Ai Hoshino, and Kana Arima. They are both casted in a stage production of a popular manga series called Tokyo Blade, along with Aqua's girlfriend, Akane Kurokawa. Aqua is using this opportunity to investigate potential suspects in the murder of Ai within the theater industry, but when the mangaka insists on rewrites that forces him to rely on emotional acting as well as putting the production into chaos, he has to come face to face with his inner turmoil stemming from the traumatic event. This is directed by Daisuke Hiramaki, done by Doga Kobo, and it's based off a manga. So, Mason, what were you expecting going into this?
Well, I feel like we're gonna kind of echo each other for these first couple bits, but I was expecting more of Oshi no Ko. I have not read the manga beyond where we got in season 1, and if you remember, my thoughts on season 1 was kind of lukewarm. I thought it had potential, and I was like, hey, this might go on to have more amazing seasons, and I'd be interested to see what happens. But honestly, I didn't hear a ton in our Discord or the community of how folks were bouncing off of it. I was just like, oh, that's a big name in anime. Oshi no Ko is extremely well known, but didn't really have any indication of what I was in store for. So pretty neutral, I would say.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I was always excited for more Oshi no Ko because I find that the mystery aspect of the show tends to be very pretty decently well done for the most part, and I always love myself a good mystery. So I was looking for more of that and more of the main characters delving into that plot point. So I was essentially I was like, oh yay, more of the same. And to be honest, the show kind of did come with like little fanfare. It just sort of was like, oh, second season already, super. And I'm looking forward to what I think is going to be a third season. So
it has been announced.
Yeah, which wouldn't surprise me. And so one of the things about it is that I think one of the interesting things about the show, and I thought about it in the first season, is that it has a short shelf life, right? And so one of the things I was going into is how much you should be pushing the mystery forward, right? And the show should be short, right? So I don't want it to be like X amount of seasons. So, and I got a lot of that in the second season. It really feels like the pacing of the show is that way. So that's what I was hoping for. And more or less, that's the expectations I was going into prior. It's like, how are you going to push forward that mystery? And are you going to do it at a decent pace and not just bring everything to a halt to like make the story spin on?
Otaku?
So I echo what Andrew said. I actually have read the manga, and it actually just finished this week. Oshi no Ko is
very
done.
recently.
Very recently done. So more than anything, I wanted to see it progress the story for those who don't read the manga. And season 1 was a very accurate adaptation of what the manga had put out. So I was hoping for more of the same. I wanted it to stay true to the manga and move the story forward and give you that insight into the characters that everybody's grown to love. And it does that. So I was expecting more of the same.
Yeah, so when this season came out, I think at the time a certain uncomfortable plot point occurred in the manga that I heard about. Won't say what specifically it is, but I think people can take a guess. So I was a bit apprehensive going into it, considering how I knew something would turn out eventually. But I wanted to give it a go because I did enjoy the first season. So when I was doing impressions of it, I was really surprised at how much I was enjoying the arc it starts off with. Some of the developments in the first half, I decided like this. Even though I'm usually apprehensive of passing season 2s, it really has to do something extra to get me to pass it. Due to the fact that we've already reviewed it once, most likely. So passing a season 2 means there has to be a reason. And I was surprised by the developments in the second season that I was like, okay, let's pass it. This would be a really great discussion. And here we are today. So Mason, would you recommend Oshi no Ko season 2?
I would. I think like most people, I would say if you liked season 1, you should watch season 2. I think it brings more to the table. And I think I will say I disagree with Andrew and by de facto Otaku with the whole mystery aspect. I think the whole MacGuffin of Aqua trying to find the murderer of his reincarnated mom is the least interesting part about this. It seems like just a weird supernatural plot point, but it's really, Oshi no Ko to me is at its best when it's just diving into the industry and how creatives work together or don't, or how, different producers or fundraisers or original source creators have to work within a confines, within this pressure cooker to make something work. And there's something kind of fun seeing a anime adaptation of a manga
talking about a play, like in all these kind of like cross-medium messages of all these people, all these creatives had to make this show about creatives fictionally making a play that were created by a creator who created a manga. Like it's so levels deep, and I loved the first arc of this, the 2.5 the stage play arc. I thought it was really engaging, and yeah, it's a little melodramatic at times, but that's what Oshi no Ko is. It is a melodrama, and some of the big emotional outbursts is to be expected, and I think it did it well. And to me, the show fell the most flat when it tried to return to the whole, oh yeah, we're doing a whole murder mystery thing. Let's try to get to that. And the last like 4 episodes is where the show kind of dropped off for me. So it's funny how you might be coming in and enjoying one aspect of it. And I think that really at the core, there's 2 halves of Oshi no Ko, and they don't always intermix very well. And I think it creates an aspect where if you like both, great, but it's usually serving one master at the cost of another. And for that reason, I can't give it huge acclaim, but I think maybe I liked it more than season 1. So I honestly don't know how I feel about the show, and you guys are going to help me talk through that. So that's where my recommendation lands. Andrew, why am I wrong?
Okay, so wait, how did you know I was going to disagree with your disagreement? It's like you caught me. Oh my god. Oh no.
The mystery is afoot.
I think so. That's the interesting thing. So you say it's more about the industry, which I think is okay, but I think there's already a lot of other shows that do the industry thing, and like Skip Beat, I think, is a good character story that does a lot with the industry.
Sure.
But I think this one uses the industry as a vehicle for the characters' motivations and for the characters' internal thought processes, right? Which is why I recommend the show for a lot. I really did enjoy that first part of the show, and I did enjoy aspects of the last part of the show, and honestly I think it kind of gets both interesting and boring in the middle when they actually run the play, for reasons we'll get into in the spoiler section personally. But I think I think the mystery aspect is what makes the show interesting. It's what drives the main character, and it's what moves the people around him in general, even though they haven't realized it yet, because they're all sort of moving around this main character who's trying not to be the main character, but is sort of like dragged it with it. It's like that old adage, like those who are best suited for power are those who don't seek it out, in a lot of ways, right? It feels like in a lot of ways that's sort of what his character is like, an analogy for in some ways.
Andrew, with all the quotes this episode, geez Louise.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller off the top. Oh my goodness, this man can't be stopped. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Look, like Tears in the Rain, there's just so many of them. And they'll just sorry, I'll apologize. No, but for the most part, like, I do recommend it. Like, if you did like season 1, it's more of season 1 in a lot of ways, but also not a lot of season 1 in a lot of ways. So you are getting more, and you are getting different things. It does focus on a lot of other characters, whereas a lot of first seasons will focus on the main characters. This one focuses on a lot of side characters, and you get a lot of great character moments using the vehicles of the various industries that are intersecting in this show. And it is a very metatextual work in a lot of ways. Like, it is very metatextual. Like a lot of what apparently happens in this show is sort of like the author's response to something that happened, to a different adaptation to a thing that they did way back when. And it's sort of like this whole like weird weaving of the meta in all sort of things around it, and not Facebook. So yeah, no, I definitely recommend it. If you watched the first season, you enjoyed the first season, even a little bit, I think this is definitely worth another watch. Definitely worth the watch, and would be my recommendation.
Otaku, as someone who's read the manga and can laugh at all our like bad
I'm so
predictions.
glad you're here to give your perspective as a manga reader.
So I absolutely am going to recommend continuing, and I think, Mason, you're half right. And as far as I believe that the connections with their roles in the industry push them forward as people. Like, you see the growth as a person, as a young teenager who's finding their way in the world, what they do in the industry and the interactions they have push them forward as people. And like you said, we'll talk further about it as we get into spoilers. But I do believe the strength of this season falls on really getting an insider view of how things work in Japan as far as stage plays and the like are concerned, because the author has stated that he used a lot of his own personal experiences while writing Oshi no Ko. It's not, a one-for-one adaptation, but he took pieces from what he's experienced working in all the different sides of media and kind of this is what you get. So it's a very intriguing and very realistic look at what goes on to produce something like that. And then I think you have the people like you, Mason, that are attracted to that insider look. And you also have the people that are like, but what about the mystery? There's still that little dangling carrot to draw in the people that maybe aren't so into the technical side of things. So I absolutely recommend it. It's true to the manga. If you love season 1, you'll absolutely love season 2.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend season 2, as everybody else said. You like the first season. Second season, as Mason said, I think it's definitely on par, maybe even better. I feel like the character developments went a long way here, and not just Aqua, but I think the side characters are just great. I mean, I love Akane, I love Kana, I even now love Melt. Melt of all characters that I totally forgot about in the first season, and now is like one of my favorites. I hope we get to see, I don't know if we'll see more of him in the future, because he definitely does not seem like to be a very important character going forward, but what they did with him was great. The production quality, it has not lessened since the first season. It still looks really good. Not gonna lie, there are some drawbacks. I do think that the industry exposition is just so like it's not, like, in parts it's not bad. Like, overall I can deal with some explanation on some things, but especially in the first couple episodes they just hammer this long-winded explanation on how this one thing works. This one, like, usually it's Kana who's telling us how it is, and it's not really done in a way that is very natural. It sounds like she's reading from a textbook, and this was a problem in the first season too. But that was only really a thing in the first couple episodes. After that, it starts to get going. After that, I do remain very uninterested in Ruby and her pursuits. I think she is kind of weak right now. There might be a little bit of interest going forward after what happens at the very end, but overall right now, I really could care less about the idol stuff. Like, the play took the interest of this season. I think it does have one or two good twists by the end of the season. And even though the search for the murderer is not the focus of this show, there has been some movement towards it. So I'm really excited for what happens in the third season and going forward. And I think we're ready for spoilers.
Spoilers are coming. Oh my god!
All right. Has anybody ever been to a 2.5D stage play before?
No, that's a very Japanese concept, I would imagine, in a lot of ways.
I've never heard of this before.
Or actually,
2.5D.
Well, actually, have you been to a theme park? Have you been to like a Disney theme park or anything like that? Actually, it's not. So it's sort of like that, right? A lot of what they describe, it's sort of like an interactive ride. So I forget what it's called. It's like, it used to be called extraterrestrial, or it's now called like Stitch's Ride or something. It's basically these rides that have like effects that happen to you while you're experiencing the show. But it's you mostly find it in theme parks in North America, I would imagine. And so a lot of it is, so as a term of just like as a stage play, I think is not something that happens very often outside of like I feel like Japanese culture as in this particular case, and like how they go to shows and whatnot. So
Yeah, I don't know if I've experienced what you've outlined, but this is so freaking cool.
Well, it's
The
funny
moving
that you
stage and everything.
it's funny that you kind of don't have experienced it, because in this show we have Aqua, an actor in this stage play, who himself does not know what this is, and a whole major arc of the first resolution is him going to one of these and being like, "Oh, this is what I'm going to be an actor in." And then he solves the issue of the manga creator not being on board by telling her, this is actually what we're doing. So we have like two of the same reveals of characters being like, "Oh, it's actually not a theater play like I thought. It's a fancy theater play. This changes everything."
Yeah.
And it was a little, once, like you said earlier, same with season 1, a little exposition heavy on how things work. But overall, I still found that arc really enjoyable. And this pretty much jumps right into season 2 with, here's this huge cast of characters, they're doing a thing, go. Like, I did not look up any, like, season 1 explained, summarized. I didn't rewatch season 1 for a while. Like you, I forgot about Melt entirely. And so I came in a little bit rusty, but I think I picked up on it pretty quickly. There's a little flashback to kind of, it starts in mid-performance, and then it shows them rehearsing, and then it goes back to, like, how it generated. So, it holds your hand a bit, but I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I think the show does a lot. I think even if you were like not coming to it fresh, I think the show does actually put enough snippets without feeling too much like, hey, previously on, but they kind of go like, oh, remember this like one time, and sometimes it'll be a line of dialogue, sometimes it'll be like an image that they'll show on screen, and it'll be like, oh yeah, that's where that character is from, or they'll list it out. And yeah, sometimes it feels like they're reading a laundry list, but a lot of the times I don't remember those moments as much, because I remember all the introspection conversations that these characters are having with one another, right? Like the moment between the two mangakas, right? Or the mangaka and her assistant, who's now a mangaka who draws Tokyo Blade, and then delving into her psyche and how her work ethic is what makes her amazing, but also is what's pulling her back a little bit. And the understanding that people who go through the same, in some ways, traumas can have with one another. Like, I get it, but also you can have frustrations with one another. It's like that's like a fun moment where they're basically drawing a manga in the middle of the night to meet the deadline, and they're just crying and arguing and yelling at each other, and it's all from love. And it's like, that's like a great scene, in my opinion, as well. So yeah, no, there's a lot interesting things. So I'm just question of curiosity, and I don't want spoilers. Okay, Otaku. All right, but I'm curious on everybody else's thoughts. That gray-haired girl at the end of the show, that's just I reincarnated, right?
We're just jumping right into that. I don't think that's I reincarnated. I think it's probably some sort of mystical being that is pulling the strings here.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but the one thing that you have to think about is, what is the overall theme of Oshi no Ko? What did the very first episode of the show drive home? So this is the same mangaka that did Kaguya-sama. Kaguya-sama is a comedy. Oshi no Ko is a tragedy. If you keep that in the forefront of your mind, the show will make a lot more sense.
Is she the goddess from the shrine? The
I'm not
entertainment
saying who
goddess?
she is. Just
We'll see.
you might be like me. I wanted more, so that's why I read ahead.
No, that's fair. I can wait on some more animation, to be fair.
I can tell you one thing: the community at the very end was not happy. The Oshi no Ko community is not.
I mean,
happy.
it's an Akasaka manga. Of course, it's not going to end well.
Well, I think that's most endings to most manga. It feels like for a lot of people, I think a lot of the emotions sometimes
Delete it
come
from the
fact that
canon.
it's ending.
Delete it.
Yeah.
It's ending. So yeah.
I
so
legit forgot. Like I knew, but somehow I also forgot that this was from Akasaka, and I love saying Akasaka.
It's
so fun.
damn fun.
It's so fun. And I know it's supposed to be Akasaka Aka, but Akasaka is
I know.
so much better. Anyway, so as I'm watching this towards the end, I'm like, God, Kana is so Kaguya, and it's crazy. And then I realized, like, oh, duh, it's from the same creator. Of course they are similar. It's just like in the voice acting and the reactions. I'm like, Jesus, this is Kaguya in a different universe.
Do we have any best
But-
girl debates here, really quick?
Oh,
Well, it's a
so
Kane.
contested.
It's a Kane.
Oh.
There's
Okay, we
no
got one for
content.
Akane.
I love
It is,
Akane,
obviously.
but I freaking love Kana too. It's really tough.
You're just like Tsundere's. It's fine. Akane is like clearly best girl. Like obviously, it's not even a question. Like
Okay.
she
Like,
is.
here she is emulating his own mother for his sake.
And it was
It's weird, but she does it.
flawless.
Yeah.
Flawless what she did.
Oh yeah. I mean,
She clears Kana.
she has a great moment. Like, and we can refocus the conversation in a second. But like, she has great moments. Like, I'm looking to kill somebody. Would you follow? What if I told you I was going to kill somebody? It's like I would follow you into doing that. Or
Yeah.
oh my God, Aqua, you idiot. You are so preoccupied with the answer of finding out that your father is dead. Obviously not, that you haven't realized the obvious that your father isn't dead. But I can't tell you because I like that you're no longer pursuing this revenge aspect. Right? And it's just like her just
Yeah.
realizing it and just being like, oh, you dum-dum, you're completely missing all the obvious signs that I see. And so that's what makes her like such a great character in my opinion.
That was so interesting. Like, because I also know that this can't be correct. This person cannot be his father, but she knows why it cannot be completely correct. And I can't put my finger on it yet. Like, it's probably obvious and I just haven't figured it out and I probably need a hint to get it all right. But the fact that they kept this unobvious and they haven't delved into what she knows from the information that Aqua has given her, I think is really compelling.
So let's go back to the main crux of the show, right? Because essentially most of the show, which is like what, 8 episodes of the show, is dedicated to the Tokyo Blade arc,
9,
right?
9 episodes.
Yeah, it's a
Nine.
lot.
I
No,
know
I
that
think-
because, to the credit of this show, I had some free time and I watched the first 7 episodes like in a row. Like, it was a very easy binge and I'm just like having a great time. And I kept on being like, in my notes, okay, this arc definitely ends at episode 6. Okay, this arc definitely ends at episode 7. Like, I kept on like predicting like, oh, the first half of the season will be the Tokyo Blade stage play. And then it just kept on going. And I was like, I think like midway through episode 9 is when it transfers.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and that's a dramatic drop off. Like the moment it gets focused on Ruby is when you realize just how like lower level she is compared to Aqua's story.
I don't know if I fully agree with that statement, but I'm more curious about how do you guys feel about the Tokyo Blade arc sort of in the middle or towards like the middle to end. It sort of becomes like a shonen battle manga for like a bunch of episodes.
So I will
It's so
say
cool.
the good part, the most impressive thing is honestly the beginning where they drop 15 new characters on you, half of which are playing a secondary character, and it's actually not as hard to like digest all of that as you might think. Now, obviously, they are very simplified at the beginning and they kind of spoon feed you their deeper character, but I do think the show did a great job of that. Where I think the middle had to work for me is you had to completely believe that the characters that they were presenting in the stage play were like perfectly cast 1-to-1 to every inner emotional struggle that the actors were going through in their lives, and you had to make this grand connection of, and what the show was trying to do is being like, oh, all these actors are so perfectly represented in the characters and the turmoil that the person they're playing is going through, and you had to like connect that and not be like, oh, it's just a stage play, and kind of like you had to tie those two together inseparably, which was very melodramatic in a lot of ways, but I could buy into it, and I think they did a good enough job. But yeah, you could say it dragged a bit if you want.
No, I mean, I think it was so interesting how we are practically watching the play, but at the same time, we are delving into the characters' issues and seeing them work through them in real time during this 2-hour play that they're in. And the fact that we see so much of the play within the episodes it takes place in, I think it was a gamble that I think paid off.
I was going to say, I know that the people that didn't love the play arc, my wife was one of them because this was a show that we watched together. And she said to her, the play arc more to her felt like watching a behind the scenes documentary of a play.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome. That's the best part.
It became a little long for her. She was like, let's get to the point, because she is one of those people that is more in it for the murder mystery, because she's a big, she loves all the true crime stuff. So she's like, I want the murder mystery solved. Why aren't we touching on the murder
you would
mystery?
agree. This
You'll
whole
have to be
arc
in
wasn't
for
really
a
serving the
long
mystery.
time.
You could pretty much skip these 9 episodes and not get anywhere in the murder mystery. Like this whole season 2, if you come for the murder mystery, which I get is an appeal for the show, you're only going to be served at the very end. And yes, Aqua is making connections along the way, but for the most part, you're sitting through him being like, how do I act emotionally? Because I get really sad when I think about my mom, and that's a really sad part, but that's what I need to think about to act emotionally sad. And it's as with the rest of the show, having Aqua as your main character, having Ruby as the main character, kind of drags everything down, because it's still trying to serve that murder mystery novel when it's clearly not trying to for 9 episodes. And
yeah, so I think that's a problem with within industry shows in general, right? I think you have to get, so I think the reason why the Tokyo Blade arc is as long as it is because, as you see with the 3 episodes after it, which is just like sort of like an epilogue of sorts to this whole season, is that there is no, like, you can't extend the Tokyo Blade arc for an entire 12 episodes. That's too long. But you can't do it in 6 because that cuts out a lot as well. I think I think you lose a lot. I think it really, as much as it was what took me out of the Tokyo Blade stage show presentation in some ways was that it did become sort of like a shonen battle arc where everyone was fighting through their acting, which I thought was just ridiculous in a lot of ways.
It was.
And I
that one move that Melt does, I can't imagine how he does it once, like,
where he like kicks the sword up and it flips around and he catches it.
And nobody else knows that this is gonna happen, and he just does it once, and he is expected to do it for a whole month, and somehow that's not an issue. But sorry.
Oh no, I agree. Like, it's really funny because they're just showing you the premiere episode, and then you're like, all these things are happening. I'm like, okay, guys, you do realize that you have to do this for like 30 plus more shows, right? But on it, I still had fun with it. I'm not going to say I didn't have fun with it. I just know that it took me out a little bit because it felt like they just entered the in a meta way. The shonen battle manga that they were using for the 2D fight stage show was a representation of the shonen battle that they were having through acting as a metaphor for their emotional states and how they are presented to the world and how the world would see them. And
it's those metatextual things we talked about. It's burrowing so many layers deep that you have to be on board for every connection. Otherwise, part of it's going to fall flat.
And if you don't get it, they still explain it to you. And it's not that bad, right? Like, Melt's whole thing is like, oh, this is the reason why I cast Melt. Because, yeah, he's kind of a shitty actor, right? But when he hits that one breakthrough moment, that underdog moment, everyone's going to fucking love him. And dude was like, right. And, it was kind of nice to see that proud papa smile that the guy had when he's like, you did it, boy. You did it.
Well, he didn't do it. Yeah. Doga Koba just put on a bunch of Sakuga, and we were like, wow, pretty colors. I guess he did do it. I'm convinced.
Oh, Mason. You're so silly.
I mean, I guess it's one of those things where, what do we like more? The 2.5 stage play where they just committed to the the industry thing, or the half and half, hey, we're doing a music video shoot, but simultaneously finding bodies in the forest. Like, you can see that when they do it simultaneously, it just feels so stilted, and you feel like Ruby is underserved, the murder is underserved. You feel like everything's kind of pushed to the side, and there's nothing left. I don't know.
So, one of the things, so you guys, just let's go on to a Ruby discussion briefly here. I would say would be a pretty interesting point to go on, because I agree basically through up until now, the end of the show, I think Ruby overall is a weaker character, but she's mostly portrayed as such intentionally. And it very much feels intentional, right? Until you get to this arc. Because they're putting the mystery on the forefront, and we're protecting her innocence, as we always think we are. But I think that also on a higher level, in trying to protect someone's innocence without without proper discretion, it usually ends up doing more harm in the end. And I think
that's
going
why we
forward,
don't ban Assassination Classroom. I agree.
Ask class for all. Ask class for all.
You got it.
But I think in season 3, she's going to become a more interesting character. And I think it's sort of like that build up, right? And you can sort of see parts of it, right? You kind of find out like the reason she wants to be an idol makes a lot more sense. And even that little moment she has with that songwriter who she's like, she's not giving up, right? She really wants him to write her a song. And so she's like, well, I'm going to do a thing and try and convince you. And it's kind of actually funny how that's a really good representation of like creative blocks in general in a lot of ways. Like you really can't, and I experience that sometimes when I write for like my D&D campaign. I'm coming up with ideas. I'll have all these ideas one day and I just won't have nothing. And then one day someone will send something to me and it'll inspire me to like write something great, at least in my opinion.
I love how they have connections to all these like high class songwriters and music video people that they can just make this happen.
Yeah.
But also it feels like these 3 teenage girls they're the only ones working.
Whoa, teenage is a strong word there.
Group. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about Memcho.
She's so old.
I hate her. Not because she's old, but because she's ugly.
Wow.
And because I think she's really annoying, and I don't know if she might get an arc later on that makes me like her at all, but I just think out of the 3 girls, I like Kana. Ruby, she has her moments, and I can tell she's going to get development as we go on. Memcho is just a nearly 30-year-old, dual-haired, colored weirdo.
So here's my
I guess you could look at it. I was just going to say, like, with Mem, I think she is just representative of the person who's holding on to their spot in the industry as tightly as they can because they're so close to being out. And the way that the pacing of the show follows with the manga, I agree. Like, Ruby was very underserved this season. I think season 3 will be more Ruby season and less Aqua. If it follows the way I think it's going to. Yeah. But you never know.
Hold on. You know what? I just want to say.
Well enough.
Mem is black. Mem is a black person. Did you see? You love High School Musical, Caroline?
Yes.
You remember what's her name? Taylor. Taylor was like 30 when she was in that. Like, you know, acting along all those.
She looks so young.
Exactly. Mem is black. That's all. She's that's it. I'm holding it. Mem is black.
Oh, so that's what you mean.
Mem is black. She's acting up those kids because she's like, you know what, y'all are children. But I think it's also illustrative in the final episode where they're like, yeah, she's just sort of like there. And it's actually interesting. I think from my perspective, I think she was initially developed to be a love interest of sorts, and I think the mangaka kind of just dropped that idea at some point.
For who?
For Aqua, obviously. He's
really?
Yeah.
That's grooming. That's weird. Even if he is
older, kind of
30s.
in a way, but not really.
Yeah.
The only way it could work.
There's a scene I remember partially in season 1 where I thought, okay, she's not supposed to be, but then she says something that alludes to the fact that they could push it this way, and I think that might have been an original story process that I think that the author may have wanted to go through, but I think they just dropped it, which does happen, right, in anime. But for the most part, I think Mem is just supposed to be there as like a guy, like someone who exists in the industry who has connections, and is sort of along for the ride. And those characters are fun and are necessary. Not everybody needs to be like integral
in the
spotlight.
To the plot. Yeah, I like them.
It's just because you put the 3 of them into an idol group, you draw comparisons.
Of course.
And Kana's important. Obviously, Ruby's important. She's important.
There.
She's the third one.
But also, No, but
She's the third one.
But it's balance, right? You can't have everybody vying to be the star. That's how a lot of groups break up in the first place, right? You need a balance of everything, right? She wants to be famous, but she doesn't want to be in the spotlight more than she has to be, I feel like. And we can all relate to that, especially as older people. Maybe not you youngsters over there, but I think a few of us can relate to that being as older people. Sometimes you just want to be there. You know, you don't want to have to do all the work. You don't want to have to be the face of everything, but you kind of want to like enjoy the perks of being next to the person with all the face of everything. There's nothing wrong with that.
Coming out of this show, there's pretty much three things on my mind. First of all, I know we mentioned, Ruby will have a bigger impact in the next arc. Maybe not. Only Otaku knows and God. But to me, I thought it was strange that she finds out that there's this dark thing going on, and her big reveal is like, I hope my brother gets to the bottom of it. I won't do anything, but my brother will be the detective because he's the main. Like, that seemed odd. Second of all, like if they started the next season and just had another long equivalent of the stage play arc of just here's 8 episodes about them writing music, like I feel like they can't do that again. Like they need to, as Andrew talked about, as Otaku talked about, need to really actually start getting to the bottom of this mystery. Like we can't take any more cul-de-sac escapades of just side content. Like we need to, if we care about this murder mystery, show me as the audience person that you're getting somewhere with it. And I thought was interesting is season 1, 11 episodes, covers 40 chapters. Season 2, 13 episodes, covers 40 chapters. Season 3 has been announced, and that will cover, as they've announced, 70 chapters of the manga. So will that be twice as long? Will that be shorter? And what that leaves is only like 16 chapters or 20 chapters that won't get adapted in that season. So are they going to split it up? Or are they going to have a movie? Like, I don't know where Oshinoko goes from here. But if I was a fan, as much as I like that industry stuff, I really would want them to kind of streamline and get to, the heart of the mystery. And I don't know what's next. And there's a good thing for that. There's a bad thing. Otaku's laughing in my face right now because he knows, but I don't know. I'm left with a lot of uncertainty, which I think is the intended experience, but not in a way that makes me feel like, oh, I gotta go watch season 3 because I know I might not get what I'm being teased here. And I guess I just feel hesitant to continue this, as good as it is.
Now, one thing that did give me hesitation going from season 1 to season 2 was about Aqua. And I feel like at first I was thinking, I don't know how much I can deal with Aqua's eternal emo, I'm going to murder the person who murdered my mother as soon as I'm done with this stage play kind of personality. The thing that changed that is the fact that they focus on his issues, and that has a marked difference in him by the end of this season. So that changed everything. Like we are going differently than what I was expecting. So I'm kind of hoping that would be the trend going forward, that what we are expecting will be turned on its head again. And I feel like even Aqua's change was enough to keep me satisfied to maybe push through some more boring aspects if that happens to be the case.
I will say this, without spoiling anything, Aqua does have a pretty seismic shift in what his role at the end will be. And I won't say any more than that. But what you see of Aqua, the emo, oh, I'm so upset. Like that, there is a seismic shift in when it really hits the fan on the murder mystery side of things. So there is a shift coming, and it serves a purpose. Whether or not you're happy with that shift and why it happens, only time will tell.
I mean, we have seen the inklings of that, of him for the first time taking his foot off the gas and realizing, oh, I can live my own life. I can exist beyond this trial of retribution that I've been on for the last 16 years of my life. I can smile. I can smell the rose. Like, we've seen him start to back up. Of course, we all know he's misinformed on why he thinks that and is going to have to get plunged back into that cold bath. So I guess I just don't like Aqua enough as a character to care about his development. I feel like he holds the show back in some ways and not. I don't really vibe with how he is the vehicle that the story is presented through. And so I don't care is what I'm saying. I'm a meanie.
What about something I think all can agree was pretty good in the show, and I think the animation overall was
absolutely
very solid in the show.
It's
Absolutely.
pretty.
As with
And the
season
music
one,
too.
Our eyes.
Yep. And I like the little touches they did. I like that music video at the end of the show at the season.
Yeah, I thought that was a great thing. As much as
like,
we didn't really care about Ruby, like finally seeing like a finished product of what they actually sounded like, what the video looked like when we saw the film, like that was nice. I loved kind of seeing those elements of it.
Yeah. And like now that Ruby has gone through a change, I call her Dark Ruby because I think it's cool. Even though it kind of ends with her like, and I hope my brother gets down to business on this. I am interested to see where she will go. And even though I know Mason wasn't huge on this last arc, I was like, ooh, when they found the body. I'm like, shit is hitting the fan. They found the body. I was really excited.
That's the true crimer in you. Now you're like,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but then they're like, here's this magical gray-haired girl who's surrounded by the ravens, and I'm like, oh, it's either going to be a weird supernatural thing, which is not what I like. When I look for murder mystery series, I don't want the supernatural involved. I don't want it to be a mystery that is beyond the real world, and that's just my preference, though. And that's what I take her to be, because she seems to have this all-knowing deity-like appearance, but who knows? It could be another reincarnation of someone from the past, and I guess I'm not walking away from this thinking like I can't wait for season 3 to find out the mystery. I just want season 3 to exist and be over. I don't know. I just am not finding myself invested. As good as it was, as good as the art and the sound and just the general production was, I don't know. I just wasn't a sucker for it. But it was still good.
I kind of agree, but they literally started off the show with reincarnation.
Sure.
So you they kind of set you up for that.
Should we go into ratings then, I guess?
I think so. I just want to say my favorite part of animation wasn't the Sakuga. It wasn't the crazy eyes. It was when they went for drinks after the performance and Kana's drink said ginger ale. Like it had a little sign that pointed to it that said ginger ale. And it wasn't like a one-time gag, but it was in every single scene. It just kept on showing up. I thought that was really funny.
That was funny.
Yeah, I can score this first as, I don't know. I feel like talking about it. I don't know why the director guy, Rydon or whatever, he's like, I love looking at people's faces when they leave the theater and they're so happy. And he's like standing behind as people leave. So he's just looking at the back of their heads. That makes sense. Anyway.
That's true.
My favorite part of this was the 2.5D stage play that consisted of 9 of the 13 episodes. That's literally 70%. The equivalent of that is 3.5 out of 5. So I'm going to give this score. I'm giving it 3.5 bag of bones out of 5. It was very solid and decent. I just have my hesitations with it, but it's still good. Andrew, what do you got?
Why am I always second?
Because that's how we started, and I'm a sucker.
That's fine. No, I liked a lot about the show. I really enjoyed it. I think even in the stage play, I think when you look at the motivations for why Aqua works as hard as he does to keep it going is because he's always thinking about catching that murderer in the future. And all of these steps are to make sure he has enough time to do what he does. At the end, when he pulls out the bag with all of the DNA testing he had run, because he took which is like, dude, what the fuck? I think it's like
so good, wasn't it?
It just goes to show that he's always like thinking about doing this thing, and so when he gets that arc resolved, but you as a viewer know obviously it can't be resolved, right? It's too early. You're kind of like, okay, well, when is he gonna get back into the fray, right? It's like I thought I was out, but you keep dragging me back in. Another quote for y'all.
Godfather 3.
I never seen it, but it's a good one.
I think the disconnect for me is that Aqua is always caring about this murder mystery, and the show isn't. The show is off in La La Land, and therefore I'm in La La Land. So, anyway. Continue.
But yeah, no, so overall at the end, I don't remember what I rated season 1. I'm curious to see where season 3 goes. I think when I originally saw season 1, I'm like, this is a great show, and I think it served. And if it's not more than 3 seasons, I think the show would probably hold up very well. I think in the future, I'm gonna give this a 4.25. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna give it a 4. Star eyes turning black star. Out of 5.
I don't think you put Oshi no Ko on your Annie list.
My anime list, is it not on there?
I just looked for it. I couldn't find it.
Oh,
I was gonna let you know what you gave
Let's
season
talk
1, because I gave season 1 a 3 out of 5. So I thought this was an upgrade, 3.5. But
hold on.
I could be
Oshi no
wrong.
Ko.
You might be.
Oh no, I gave it a 9. So actually, you know what? I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I changed.
Oh no, I'm ruining the average. I
4.5. 4.5. 4.5.
Uh,
It's not a 10. It's not a 10 for sure. But I think overall, when we get to the end of this story, it might actually end up being a 10. But for now, all of them have been a solid 4.5. So 4.5 star eyes that turn into black star eyes out of 5.
as someone who has seen the end and knows exactly what we're getting ourselves into, Otaku, what did you think of this season?
All right. So for me, I felt the season was strong. It definitely was drawn well. I think that the story elements that they touched on progressed the characters forward enough for me. It's staying true to the manga, which is always very important to me. And I wish that it had done a little better job of pushing it forward more to make people like Mason care more to maybe continue with it. But for me, solid adaptation, thoroughly enjoyed it. I am going to give it 4 Kana pouts because Agua won't pay attention to her out of 5.
There were a lot of pouts in this anime. Big year for pouts.
Yes, indeed. Overall, I think this inches above the first season, and it kind of makes me realize, no, this was not just a one-off, hot anime of the season kind of show. This has longevity, at the very least 2 seasons worth of longevity. And on top of everything that we've already talked about, the OP is a freaking bop. Tatsuya Kitani and I think somebody else on that track. It's such a good song. And then you also have the ED, which is so grungy, and it's Hitsu Bungaku or something like that's a longer title of a band. But it's so good.
I'm a sucker for when shows start playing the ED as the scene is still finishing up, so you're you can anticipate it and you know it's coming, and it the show had a phenomenal flow. As I said, I watched 7 episodes back to back to back and did not feel like I was another one. It was an easy watch, and just like season 1, just to interrupt Caroline some more, I wasn't a huge fan of the opening at first, but it just kind of worms its way in there. And
and it really caught me by surprise. I think it did a fantastic job considering what it was playing up against with the first season. So I think the first season I gave a 3.5. I'm going to give this season a 4 dark rubies out of 5, or actually 4 non-alcoholic ginger ales out of 5.
And that perfectly, I think, gives us an average of a 4. 2 4s, 4.5, 3.5. I think that's a very fair score for Oshi no Ko second season, and that's a pretty ringing endorsement. Now we're sticklers around here, so if that isn't a reason to watch it, I don't know what is. But thank you all for joining us on this a little bit long, but hopefully well thought out and reasoned, and hopefully not too trashy episode of the podcast. If you didn't like it, you can just delete it from the canon. We don't blame you. Follow us at AAAPodcast.com for hentai episodes, hobby addicts, after parties. Submit your mailbags. Vote for the listener's choice. Join the Discord. Be a cool person. Listen to Andrew's amazing rants about boobs in the voice chat, and just join Anime Club and be a trooper. But thanks for the support.
Glorious.
Thanks for listening. Next week, we are doing a review of my dear friend Nokotan. So I wonder if that's also going to get a 4 out of 5. We'll see. Maybe not. Another great OP. Better OP for sure. With that said,
Get ready
anything
for
else
CGI deers, everybody.
for the good folks listening?
Let's head into our after party, I think.
Oh yeah, we got places to be. We will see you there hopefully, and if not, have a good day. Thank you all for listening. I need to play the music. I need to play us out.
Play the music.
Play the
Play
music.
the music.
Mason.
Play the damn
Take it
music.
out.
There we go. Thanks for listening.
That was a little late. Bye.